All right, so today I want to go over how do you study for your Unit 3 test on natural resources. So start with your expanded map, which I have displayed on my computer here, and it should have three main categories: types of resources, energy resources, and then human impact and sustainability. Now they do vary by name because each class came up with our own names for each of the bubbles, but you should get a very similar name on yours. So let's start with types of resources. So if I go over and look at types of resources, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this one. I want to look at what we started with. We started with non-renewable versus renewable. So non-renewable being the ones that are used quicker than they can be replenished by the earth. And those were the ones that we discussed would have a long time in the replenish time. So like our fossil fuels are the big ones you want to remember. And then renewable, those were the ones that can be made pretty quickly. Like trees can be made pretty quickly, and we can use them over. It's not the reuse part that makes it renewable, it's the fact that they reproduce very quickly. And then whether it was land, water, or air. So you want to go ahead and pull out your frame that we did on the types of resources. We went over the renewable versus non-renewable. We talked about the different types of land resources we could have and what their uses were and what their impact to the environment was. And water and air, the same thing. So you want to review these concepts, specifically renewable versus non-renewable, and the emphasis on fossil fuels in order to fulfill the first part of that bubble. Now, the second part, if you recall, when you look at your expanded map, would be Virginia resources. And we did two things with Virginia resources. We did the lab where we looked at the Virginia map and we tried to determine which resource was where, so what the resource was, which province had it, and then what would we use it for. You want to have a good idea. The big thing for Virginia, we have a lot of gravel and things for roads and the Piedmont, and then of course coal in the Appalachian Plateau. That's the big emphasis, but you kind of want to be familiar with this activity. You also would like to go ahead and pull out your activity we did using the book where we looked at the different Virginia resources, what they were used for, and then we even did a little bit about mining specifically and the problems with mining, because particularly the environmental impact of mining was that we have to reclaim it back to its original form. So reclamation was when we restore it back, and we talked about the big copper mine and how it was a gigantic hole that was left behind, and it's the responsibility of a good mining company to fill that hole back in and make the environment back to its original state. So those are some of the big facts you want to talk about or what you want to review and study when you're studying for this test. The other one would be specifically know coal. Coal's the one that forms from the animals and plants that are buried deep under layers of sedimentary rock, and the heat and the pressure convert it to our coal that we can burn for energy. And now that we're talking about energy, let's look at energy resources in particular. I'm going to scoot it up just a little, too much. And if I look at energy, I can see here on mine that I've got fossil fuels, which of course we talked about, big emphasis there. It looks like we've got nuclear and some pros to nuclear and some cons, because the pro being this no CO2 emissions, but it does have radioactive waste, which with a long half-life. Hydroelectric from falling water. We've got solar from the fusion of hydrogen into helium in the sun. Wind, the big thing to remember is that it can kill birds. Geothermal, we have the cooling and heating that we use in Virginia. We use it for cooling and heating, we don't have volcanoes, so we can't use it for energy directly. And then we have tidal and biomass. Biomass being things like soybeans and corn being converted. Now, if you want to review for that portion, you want to go ahead and get out the frame that looks like this. So we did one where we had coal, oil, natural gas, nuclear, geothermal, wind, hydro, tidal, biomass, and sun. And we went through how we get it, where the energy is coming from, and the benefits and the disadvantages to both. So you want to review that. And then for that final bubble, you want to make sure that you check out the sustainability. The big thing would be pollution impacts. We talked about it with coal. Air pollution and acid rain are a huge disadvantage of coal, and a lot of air pollution is associated with smog, and we also get that with the other fossil fuels, the petroleum, which is oil, as well as natural gas having some degree, although not very much air pollution. And then habitats being destroyed when we build things like tidal or hydroelectric. And then we talked about other things we could do, like we could reduce, reuse, and recycle and save electricity and prevent the usage of electricity as a big benefit to the environment as well. When you're studying, make sure you keep an emphasis on energy resources. It's the heaviest hit portion of the test, so make sure you really know your advantages and disadvantages. And you also want to make sure you're getting out the frames and checking the vocabulary. Remember, vocabulary is located on the backs of the frames. It's going to look something like this. And you have filled in, and we have little reminders on how to remember each of the different activities. So keep those in mind, and good luck studying.